Hello, greetings. I just wanted to do a quick draw over for you, Chris. I wanted to take a look at kind of a year before and after. One of the things I noticed is that I think this is the before here. And then when posting stuff up, try and put like some kind of text on Miro. Try and put some kind of text that says like update or like newest one here. That way it's easy for us to communicate, and this would be similar if you're working with a client. You want to make sure that what you're presenting is very clear. So I wasn't quite sure at first. So this is the original. It's number 32 sketched out. This is the update. I'm gonna flip it because I feel like maybe you flipped it and that was kind of the change here. So there's some general notes. Let's say the general notes. You got some more anatomy going on with the boar, and there is more structure to the guy. My only concern before you go forward with this is that we've lost a lot of the dynamic posing of the original. It's very static now. He's kind of like walking through the forest with the pig, and like he's got his axe kind of just out. And then this one, it's dynamic. He's like charging. He's like about to strike. It's a much more interesting pose than this one, which one of the things I wanted to I think I mentioned this in the other videos. When you do your studies, once you've done the studies, you should probably put everything away and either redraw the original from scratch, or what you can do is you can just take the original and you can take the original and just turn it down and then like draw on top of it. Now that you've informed by your studies, you can draw on top of the original and better update the anatomy and the all the structure. So I think you should do that. I think you should go back to your original and draw from that, because it is a much more dynamic image. And if you're going to spend hours and hours painting this later, I don't want you to be painting hours and hours on like a more boring image. Like you already had really good stuff, so stick with the good stuff. This is not really a setback or anything. This happens with everyone. It happens to me all the time. Sometimes you practice and practice, and then by the time you're done with the drawing, it's like, well, you kind of like geared everything towards like an average instead of keeping the dynamicness of the sketch. A few things to warn you about. Okay, so let me just talk about this. Get my magenta pen here. There we go. When you're drawing like the weapon, the axe, you're drawing it at a really hard angle to read. It doesn't really look like an axe. It looks more like some kind of weird dagger thing. So that's another reason your original works better, because your original, the axe is in profile, and it shows us what the weapon is. It really communicates very well what's going on here. Now the axe is a little, in reality, the fist is facing this way. So technically the axe would be more like this, more like a little more angled, less straightforward, but you would still get some of the axe shape. And what I find, you should do is kind of cheat the shape of the weapon so that it's really readable. Really cheat the shape of the weapon to like make sure that you're getting that read on it. So there's a few things I want to carry over from your new sketch. I notice you drew this guy with a really big nose. He's got quite a long nose, and he's got an interesting beard. When I look back at this other sketch, I guess it's the same beard, but you just have a little more structure to it. But I think you should carry that over. So carry over like the face details, but you got to redraw those details on this guy. I know some of your references were like Paul Bonner, and Paul Bonner does a really good job with like crazy distorted faces. So I'm gonna just take a look at a Paul Bonner sketch that you posted, and then I'm going to let me just blow this image up, make sure it's a good size. Yeah, right now it's 2,000 by 14,000. When I work, I normally I don't work lower than 6K. So I'm going to crank this up to 6K by 42K. Not 42K, sorry. 6K by 4K. So I'm going to crank it up. It's bigger image now. And we're going to take your original sketch and just apply some of the stuff from the new sketch, which would be the distorted face, like the more stylized face. So I'm going to turn the sketch down quite a bit. Start a new layer, switch to black. And I'm gonna zoom in for the sake of this drawing, just to kind of get the face locked in, but you shouldn't be too zoomed in when you're working. Later on when you start painting, you should really consider like how zoomed in you are, because you don't want to be like painting in a bunch of details. I'm trying to think of an expression for him. Oops, I think I'm something like that. And then the nose. Like I said, I'm looking at the Paul Bonner drawing that you posted. So I'm taking the nose down like quite a bit. And he's got like eye bags and okay, so this is just a general draw to the face. You got the mustache kind of flowing in the wind, so that's good. Let's keep that. And I think the design was like something like this, where it's like it's kind of got these like braids, or not braids, but these like ties. And then we might want to consider opening his mouth a bit, like he's like screaming. And then maybe this flows backwards. I want to keep the flow going because it sells the energy. And then we might, okay, I'm going to turn on your other drawing because I want to just take a look at how you did the helmet. Okay, so it's basically like one of those standard, I don't know what they're called, the standard helmets with like that nose guard. I might take off the nose guard, keep it off, because he's got a big nose, and I feel like we lose his features if we put the nose guard on. I'm gonna flare out the helmet just a little bit to give it some more personality. And then you got to keep all this stuff. But you kind of see like how we're preserving it. And you also need to pay attention to the flow when you're doing hair and stuff like that. There's a bunch of stuff you got to pay attention to, like I feel like we might want to take the flow this way, because then the image has this directionality where it kind of goes like this. If we have the flow going this way, this something about this just it's distracting. It kind of like interrupts the energy of the piece. So I want to keep it like this way, something like that. I see how that feels better. It feels like this is directionality. That's like everything's going this way. Or technically, let me rephrase that. Technically, things are flowing backwards with like the energy of the running of the bore. But that's kind of what I see. You can go with this. Sorry, let me just make sure I'm got this up. Okay, so I'm not going to draw over the entire thing. I just wanted to kind of show you an example. Keep the mouth open. And we gotta look at the armor. Let me take a look at the other drawing. He's kind of got like faces on the pauldrons. Armor is tricky. You gotta like, because he's in an active position, you gotta really consider like it's metal, so it doesn't bend. So you gotta like draw it so it doesn't bend. You got to think about that. Like, how is it going to move on his body? You got some kind of pauldron design that I'm not going to try and replicate, but something like that. And then he's got kind of like these sleeves. The gauntlet. You might want to twist the hand. Do a hand study, like, or get a reference of your hand in the exact position. Take a photo of your hand or the hand of your friend. I guess he's got both reins. So, something like that. Obviously, you need to make that, like you gotta add the thickness to it. I guess he's trying to have like more of like a stomach, so maybe I'm gonna just draw through the bore right now and just like maybe it's like a chest piece, and this is all chainmail. I'm not trying to make up the design for you. I'm just like guessing how this would work, because you kind of got to like move around the torso a little bit. I think he's got like a little battle skirt thing on with like, looks like he drew little sections, like little scales or something. And then it's like the knee and the legs going back. And then I guess the foot would be like down there. You need to draw the stirrup. I'm not going to draw that right now just because I'm trying to show you like exactly what it would do. This arm should be coming forward, so you have it correct on yours. I guess there's like a billowy shirt or something underneath. Okay. And then you just need to do the hand correctly. Oops, that was the wrong button. I meant to erase. So in this hand, I'm trying to think about how the axe needs to be shaped. So let's just say the axe is like this. So you really see it. It's got a little spike. So then you've got his like thumb. That's the wrong position. His thumb. His fingers. Again, you know, hold like a stick or something and get a reference photo for it. But you see how that like suddenly you're reading like axe because it's got the axe shape. It's like very clear what's going on. You kind of see how this works now. That should be everything I need to show you. Obviously, you need to take everything I'm doing and apply it to the whole image, like the boar. Now that you've done your studies, redraw the boar's head. You know, practice that. Let me just turn. I'm trying to think of how I can show you this. I'll just do this. And then I'll turn this up. You can see where you're at currently, where we're going with it. More expression, more structure. Reference, you know, if you like Paul Bonner, if you like how he does the faces, look at those, pull up the image while you're drawing it and get that look going. Because he looks kind of like a normal dude here, and then we make his nose bigger and kind of like emphasize certain parts of him, and you're like, okay, I get it now. Like, he's like a dwarf guy. And you might want to play with the proportions of his arms and legs more to make him more dwarfish. Like, I know some of the Paul Bonner stuff you shared, there's like little gnomes where like they're super distorted. You might want to play with that more. You know, that could be as easy as like taking one of these arms and then like maybe his arms are shorter, you know. It's not too crazy to do that. His arms are shorter, maybe his leg is shorter, his proportions are, you know, kind of a little off. That looks a little better with the leg shorter. And that's something you can experiment with while you're doing this stuff. You don't have to like, this is all early sketching, so nothing is final, nothing is precious, nothing is necessary. Like you need to like consider that like that this is your time to play and get things right, get it really locked in, because like I said, once you start painting, you're going to be on this for hours painting. Some artists spend like, I mean, I know artists, when I first started, like I'd spend like 40 hours in a painting. That's an entire week of work. And before you commit 40 hours to something, you want to make sure the drawing is good. And the drawing I just did here, everything I just did here is what I would consider very rough. And then I would go on top of that. Oops, my gradient switched up on me for some reason. I would take my really rough drawing, go on top of it, and then maybe get like a slightly smaller pencil brush, and then I would go in here and be like, okay, now I'm going to do the final lines, and like really spend some time working out everything. Pupil, maybe he's got a mole. Think about those little characteristics too. You're telling the whole story here. If you don't add it in, no one's gonna know anything about it. You might even shrink the brush more than this to have more precise lines. When you're doing little tassels like this, think of it in threes: big shape, little shape, and a medium shape. Sorry, and the little shape. Big, medium, small. Think of it like that. Maybe his teeth are all fucked up. Maybe he's not like uh, the most handsome grill. Um, maybe his tongue's out. Little things like this. Just sell. The lip. The beard. Probably not. See, nothing too messy. When the final lines, get in here and really like work on it. Because anything you don't figure out, excuse me, anything you don't figure out in the final lines, it's gonna screw you over in the painting. Like you're gonna be painting, and go like, wait, what am I painting? Like, how did I get this shape? And you're just not gonna know exactly what you're doing, and you're gonna spend you could spend hours painting and repainting, and you're trying to mitigate that by spending more time on the lines, because the lines are pretty easy to fix. Like, the lines are easy to fix. Like you could do all this drawing and be like, oh, actually I like the tassel more more angled this way, and like it's easy to like I fixed it real quick, and then I can just come in here and fix the nose right here, and you could even start implying some shadow with the lines. Depends on if you know the lighting or not. So, like the final lines, you start getting more like interesting stuff going on. And like compared to see how rough they were, and then like the final, you start getting more expression, more attitude, more details. Start working all that stuff in little pockets like this, like what I just did here in the mouth. Like, you notice how this part's darkened, but this part isn't. Like this little pocket here, the one I'm talking about, that's really confusing when you're painting. Like, what's going on here? I see a tooth here, and then I see a tongue here, but then like, what's all this shit in here? Like, if I shade some of it in and I throw it back into shadow, I'm like, okay, well that's just the interior of the mouth now, and it just helps me figure out like what's going on. Figure out all those little things. Try not to leave anything up to what do you call it? Speculation, or like people should be able to see the drawing and know exactly what you're gonna do. Little, like if you're doing the armor, maybe the armor's got little dents for the final. Like the armor might not be perfectly neat. Maybe he's like seen tons of battles. What kind of story are you trying to tell with this guy? Who is he? Like, do you know? Because you need to tell that story. Scratch marks, stuff like that. Maybe it's got like a chip where like an axe hit him or something. So that's the next step for you. let me list out your action points, right? So like your action items, you need to redo the drawing on top of your original sketch because your original sketch was much more dynamic. Um, you need to add the structure that you learned from your studies onto the original sketch, and then focus on certain visual motifs like the flow of this tassel going this way is interesting. I think it flows better that way. Get the rough done, then come in here and start doing the final. Finals whenever you start deciding things like if this thing is like a face or something, go ahead and draw it in as like a whatever, like a little face or what, I know you had a motif of a face earlier. Maybe this is like kind of rough. I'm just drawing them with rough armor. If you wanted to have brand spanking new armor, that's fine, but a little bit of wear and tear is interesting. It's not always called for. Sometimes, a brief will say like the armor is spectacular and whatever. Something, obviously, you can't do too rough, right? So it's the final, so really lock it in. If you're confused about a design, or you're like, I don't know what this is going to go here, just make a new layer. Maybe do it in like a red color or like blue. Draw the design you want roughly. Be like, okay, I think this is kind of the design I want for this side face thing. And then you turn that down and then just get on top with another layer and get your black lines in and then start getting the final. There's no limit to how many layers you can add on and refine. So don't be afraid to like take some time and just refine something. Like if you're struggling trying to figure it out, take some time to refine it. Maybe do another study. Maybe just pull a reference up if you're really close. Maybe just pull the reference up and then you start seeing how, like, let me turn off that magenta layer, but you see how you start doing things. And so like that's the final lines. Let me just commit this all down so we can see it. Rough lines, final lines. You can start seeing the difference. And then, of course, when you're doing your rough sketch, after you've done your rough sketch, you should do a flip. You should always do at least one flip to see what you fucked up, and so what you need to like fix. Okay, so you see how the process goes. So do a rough drawing on top of your old your old sketch, because your old sketch is much more dynamic. There's little fixes like the axe, the tassel on the top of the head, and then get in there and start doing your final lines. And once you get the final lines done, we'll take a look at it one more time, do a final pass, like maybe there's some other tweaks we need to make, and then we start painting. And then that'll be a longer process, but you'll be more set up for success if you take more time on the lines. And this is the same for anyone watching this. Like the more you spend on the line art, the easier your painting is going to be. It could be fun to just jump into a painting, but in terms of like what you really need to be doing, it's the drawing is really important, and that's something that you'll just figure out as you go. All right, it's Chris. I'll upload this to Discord. Anyone watching, thanks for watching. There'll be more mentorship videos coming as people get finished up with some of their sketches, but the process is all the same. It's a bunch of refining, it's a bunch of studying. You just kind of keep the train going and you slowly get better just from drawing over and over and over again. All right, talk to y'all later.